I went to McDonald's at night not too long ago. I go there all the time and usually late at night. You see, I work at Walmart and I typically get off of work at like 11 p.m. or so. I live in an apartment nearby with my roommate and it's less than a mile away. I often walk to and from work, and right on the way back is a McDonald's. They're open 24 hours, so I go there a lot after work. One night I left work at Walmart and started heading home. I was walking back, however, as I passed by the McDonald's I realized how hungry I was. So I walked inside and then ordered some food on the touchscreen menu. As I was doing that, a guy randomly walked up to me. Now, we were literally the only two people in the McDonald's that were not employees, and this guy had entered after me. I looked over at him. He was kind of short, but was wearing a winter hat and jacket. The guy told me that he had followed me from Walmart. I was confused. Before I said anything though, the guy laughed a little and then walked away from me. I finished ordering, and then I went and I sat down to wait for my order, far away from the other guy. We both just sat there inside of the McDonald's on opposite ends. A few minutes later, my order was done, and I went up and got it. Then I walked outside of the McDonald's. I had been hoping that the man would not follow me out, but he did. After I started walking on the sidewalk, I heard the guy following me. I had no clue why this random guy would be following me. It was pretty much a straight walk back to my apartment building though, so I kept going, with the guy maybe 30 feet back. I thought about running for it or stopping and confronting the guy, but I did neither at first. When I had made it to where I could see my building in the distance, I thought I heard the man getting closer. At that point, I couldn't take it anymore and I just started running. But when I did, I heard the man yell something at me. He said, "Go ahead and run, I know where you live." This really freaked me out. I kept running though. Maybe he was just trying to scare me. I sprinted all the way back to my apartment complex and then I got into the building and went inside. The man did not catch me or anything, and I wasn't sure where he was at that point because I didn't see him, and I didn't hear him either. Then I quickly went to my apartment and made it inside. I locked the door behind me and finally stopped to catch my breath. I felt safe now, and my roommate was already sleeping by this time. Maybe 5 minutes later though, I heard a knock at my apartment door. I knew it was the guy who had been following me. He really did know where I lived. I walked over to the door, and as I did, I heard him laughing from the other side. I looked through the peephole, and he was standing there seeming very amused. Then he turned and walked away. After that, he did not come back. I still wonder why the guy did that to me. Was he just joking around? But how did he know where I lived? It was very weird. This has to be the worst thing that's ever happened in my time working at McDonald's. I used to work there years ago, and I had the job for just about 6 months. Most of the time that I spent there, I would just take people's orders behind the counter. I was young, and it was one of my first jobs. One day, I remember that the place was pretty busy. There were quite a few of us working, and I was kept busy taking people's orders. So, at one point, a man ordered, and I didn't even really remember him. That was, until he came back up with me with his bag of food. He claimed that his french fries were cold, and that he didn't want pickles on his burger, but he got them anyways. Right away, I felt like the man was going to be a problem, because I was right in the middle of taking somebody else's order and there was a line of people waiting. The fact that he just walked right up and interrupted was pretty annoying and rude, and he was also really rude the way he was talking as well. I tried to ask the guy if he could wait a minute, but he refused. He got right up in my face. I tried to get him to calm down and asked what he wanted. The man started demanding a refund and to get a new order as well. Just then, my manager Linda started walking over and interrupted. She said, No, don't give this man a refund. We're not doing this again." Then she asked the man to leave the store and threatened to call the police. I realized then that maybe there was a bit of a history with this guy. The man instantly started cursing at Linda. She kept telling him to get out of her store. Then they went back and forth for a short time before the man finally stormed off. Then Linda announced to everybody that if he came back to call the police. I was told that the guy was supposedly banned from our McDonald's for always causing problems. I guess he was always doing things like that. Well, I continued working, but only like 5 minutes later I saw the man. He was not inside of the McDonald's though, but outside in the parking lot. We had very large windows on the building, and there was a parking lot on both sides as well. I just noticed that he was kind of walking around the parking lot. I was still taking orders though, but I thought that maybe the man would come back inside. Like a minute later though, I saw him walking, holding a really large rock. He was still outside, and he must have picked it up from the rocks that we had somewhere in our landscaping. Then he proceeded to walk over to one of the cars in the parking lot. I recognized it to be Linda's car. He then got on top of the car and stood on the roof, and then threw the rock at her windshield, which smashed it. When it happened, a bunch of people looked over from the noise and saw it. The man then put his hands up in the air as if he had won something. He smiled, started laughing, and then jumped down and walked away. I took my phone out and called the police. Meanwhile, a few moments later, Linda came running out and saw what happened. She ran out of the store to her car. A short time later, the cops arrived and questioned a bunch of people, as well as looked around for the man. He was picked up pretty fast, not that far away. When I got off of work like an hour later, I know that Linda was still outside by her car talking to the police. I felt bad for her, but hopefully she had car insurance that would cover that. I didn't work at McDonald's for that long, but long enough to witness that crazy scene. I used to work at a McDonald's many years ago. Mostly I was a cashier and I would take people's orders. I often worked at night, and there would sometimes be some pretty late nights. Back then, the McDonald's that I worked at was open until 2 o'clock in the morning. Things would typically quiet down significantly from about 8 p.m. to the rest of the night. The last few hours would generally be very slow. Sometimes on weekends or other random nights it would get busy, but generally it was pretty quiet. So one night I remember that I was working until 2 a.m. I can't remember what time it was exactly, but probably at about 10 o'clock it became just me and one other coworker. It was a girl named Gloria who I was friends with, and she was around my age, but had worked there a lot longer than me. She was a manager now and did whatever was needed, really. At this point I was taking orders and she was doing all the cooking. It was just us two until close. We got a few customers here and there, and it was really pretty quiet. Soon midnight rolled around. I remember that I was out by the register standing there and just hanging out. I happened to notice someone was outside in the parking lot though. It was a man, and he looked in on the large windows that we had. He was just standing there, not moving, but appeared to be looking at me. Maybe it was partly because it was midnight and very quiet, but the sight of him instantly gave me the creeps. He had long hair, I remember, and a beard as well. He looked to be maybe in his 30s or so. I was sort of confused as to what he was doing and thought that maybe he would come inside. To be honest though, I didn't want him to. The man continued to stand there and stare at me. After like 30 seconds of this, I got too uncomfortable and I walked into the back. I went over to Gloria, who was bored with nothing to do because there were no customers. She was watching this mounted TV that was in the corner of the kitchen, so I joined her for a minute or two. Then I went back out to the front and I looked out of the window and the man was gone. I was glad to see that. So a while later, maybe an hour, I believe was the next customer to come inside. I helped them, and I remembered that I gave them their food and they went to leave. It was then that I noticed the guy was outside of the window again. He was standing there and looking at me once more. I was surprised that he was back, and once more I did not want him to come inside, and he still didn't. After like a minute, I went to the back to tell Gloria about the guy, and when we came back, he was gone. I was a tiny bit disappointed because I wanted Gloria to see the strange man, but I was also glad that he was gone because I had been nervous that he was going to come inside. He just seemed really sketchy for some reason. So, for the final hour of us being open, we didn't get any customers and I didn't see the guy. At 2 a.m. we locked up, and several minutes later I was ready to leave. Because Gloria was the manager, she was going to stay back for a few minutes and finish up some other stuff. I was tired from work and excited to go home and sleep. So I went to the door. When I did though, I was afraid that the man was going to be out in the parking lot somewhere. I didn't see him, but I was still worried. So after I went outside, I just sprinted to my car, which was not that far away. Then I got inside and I started the engine. It was at that time when I looked out of the window and I saw the man standing on the other side of the parking lot a ways away. I was afraid that he might approach me or something, so I quickly drove away and left. By the next time that I worked, I had mostly forgotten about the man. Now, I believe it was like a week later, or maybe 2 weeks later. It was basically the same setup as before, which was fairly common. It was a quiet night at about midnight. Me and Gloria were the only two people working once again. So I recall that at some point a little after midnight, I saw the man again and I instantly remembered him. He was doing pretty much the same thing of just standing there outside and staring at me. But this time, after like 30 seconds, I saw him turn and walk away. I didn't know who this guy was or what he was doing. The way he would just stand there and stare at me was very creepy though. So I didn't see him after that for the rest of the time that we were open. At 2 a.m. we locked the doors. Soon after, I went to leave. This time though, before I left McDonald's, I noticed that the man was in the parking lot, and he was standing right behind my car. I would have to walk right past him to go to my car, and he was also staring at me. I went to Gloria to show her the guy. When she came back, she saw that the guy was still there. He was just standing there and staring at us both now. I wanted to leave, but I did not want to walk past him. After about a minute, we opened up the door and asked the man to please leave the property. When we said this, he did not leave, but instead he started walking in our direction. We quickly closed the doors again, which would automatically lock now. The man reached the doors and tried entering McDonald's. Thankfully, he couldn't get in. Gloria and I considered calling the police. We didn't want to have to do that if he wasn't dangerous or anything though, so we decided to just wait around for a short time longer. Gloria and I finished up everything that had to be done. By the time that we were done with that, the man was still in the parking lot. We waited around for probably another 10 minutes. Then, finally, we saw the man casually walk away and leave the McDonald's premises. Gloria and I then went to the door and we both quickly ran for our cars. We were then able to leave and go home. After that shift, I never saw the man again. I only worked at the McDonald's for about another month though. I think that Gloria worked there longer, so it will be interesting to know if she ever saw the guy again. One thing for sure though is that he definitely gave me the creeps. The way he just stood there staring at me in the empty parking lot is something that I will never forget. This happened just a couple of years ago. It's one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me for sure. One day, I went to McDonald's to do some work. It can be a really good place to get work done from time to time. It's similar to a coffee shop because in many McDonald's locations, it's very quiet in the dining room most of the time. Plus, they have free Wi-Fi, outlets, and cheap food. So I went to the McDonald's location that was closest to my apartment. It was roughly a 5-minute drive, and after I got there, I think maybe one other person was sitting down. It was sometime in the morning, and I set up my computer at a spot in the middle of the restaurant with sort of high chairs. There was an outlet right there, and I plugged my computer into it. So, over the next chunk of time, I was just sitting there and working mostly. At one point, I got up and got some coffee and then came back to my seat. Some people came and went, but I didn't really notice them much. Then, after I'd been there for probably 3 hours at least, I was going to get another coffee. However, when I got up, I then realized that I didn't have my wallet. It had been in my jacket pocket on the left side, and I had taken my jacket off and it was hanging on the seat that I was sitting on. At first, I thought that I must have dropped it or it had fallen out of the pocket. I looked around the floor though and couldn't see it anywhere. Then I looked through all my stuff and checked all my pockets. I was very confused for a few moments because I couldn't find it. Leading up to that, I'd been very focused on my computer and sort of zoned out from the rest of the McDonald's. So I didn't know exactly when or how I could have lost my wallet. I just knew that I obviously had it about 2 hours prior when I got coffee. Then I looked on my phone and I noticed something that I hadn't realized before. There was a notification on my phone from about 10 minutes prior. It was from my bank and it said that my credit card purchase from McDonald's for like $1 had been approved. I hadn't used my credit card when I got the coffee, I had used my debit card, so now I was very confused. But then I had the thought that somehow somebody had stolen my wallet in this very same McDonald's and used it. To me, that made sense, but it seemed really crazy. I looked around, not thinking anyone would be dumb enough to stay around the scene of the crime. But there was this one man, sitting alone by himself at a booth sort of far away from me. I saw that he too was on his laptop, and he had one large drink at the table with him, no other food. Other than that, there was a man and a woman sitting who were both eating food. I thought that maybe the guy had stolen my wallet, then he had used my credit card to get the drink. And you do not need a PIN to use the credit card, just the debit card. Obviously though, I didn't want to just go up and confront him. I had absolutely no proof of anything. It was just a coincidence at this point. I stayed there on my computer looking at the screen, really just thinking about what I should do. I was about to cancel my credit card when I saw the man get up from his seat out of the corner of my eye. He walked over to the little screen where you order. When he did, he sort of went out of my sight, so I didn't see what wallet he took out or what card he used. But then, literally right after the guy walked away from the screen, I got a notification on my phone. It said that another purchase from McDonald's had been approved. This one was for more money. At that point, I knew that this was the guy for sure who had stolen my wallet. I couldn't believe that he had the nerve to stay in here while I was still there. It was almost like he was mocking me. He sat back down at the booth after that. At that point, I got up and I walked over to him. I went right up to where he was sitting and he looked over at me. When he did, I said, "Give me my wallet back." The guy didn't say anything and I demanded it again. I told him that I knew he had stole it from me. Then the man started completely denying it. He claimed that I was crazy. I told him that I had proof, and I started to go on about how I saw him using my credit card and I had a charge for it. I was taking out my phone to show him, and as I was saying these things, the man put his laptop into his backpack quickly and then started getting up. He walked right past me as I was still talking to him. I knew that he was going to try to leave, so I followed him. He left the McDonald's building and I tried grabbing him, but he shoved me back and took off running. He ran to his car in the parking lot, so I quickly ran to mine. The guy left really fast, but thankfully the roads were not too busy, and I was able to see his car down the road when I left. He came up to a red light, which was kind of lucky for me, because he had been kind of far in front of me and he was also going sort of fast. At that point, I called the police. I got the guy's license plate and I knew the car type, so I relayed that information to the cops. And it's a good thing that I did, because after the light turned green, the guy pretty much sped away from me. He started driving faster and faster. At first, I was keeping up, but soon he started going 20 miles an hour over the speed limit and then 30 miles an hour over the speed limit. And I just wasn't willing to go that fast, so I slowed down and I let him get away, but I told the police the direction that he was going. At that point is when I realized that I had forgot my laptop and everything else at the McDonald's, so I drove back. This was maybe 10 minutes after I had left. When I got back to the McDonald's, thankfully all my stuff was still there where I had been sitting. And also, the food that the guy had ordered with my credit card was ready and at the counter, so I went over and I picked it up and ate it. It was pretty good. A while later, the police contacted me saying that they had my wallet. Apparently, the guy had been speeding still and actually led the cops on a brief chase. He ended up giving it up though, and they recovered my wallet. Looking back, that was one of the craziest events that I've ever been a part of. I probably should not have followed the guy in my car. Other than that, I'm just really grateful to have my wallet back.
I was the only one silent in the car, while everyone else was screaming their lungs out. Discordant voices singing along to the song blasting from the car's radio. "Come on, birthday boy, smile a little," my older sister Hazel nudged me. Grinning like an idiot, I scowled at her, and she burst into annoying laughter. They all knew why I wasn't smiling. They all knew I hated McDonald's. But they were making me celebrate my birthday there anyway. Well, it wasn't just my birthday. I guess that's how it goes with family. I shared a birthday with my cousin Luke, who was turning 9. At 15, I wanted to spend the day at the VR game park, or somewhere actually fun. Anywhere but McDonald's. But as always, I had been outvoted. So I stayed quiet the whole drive while the rest of the family sang at the top of their lungs, like a bunch of parakeets. By the time we arrived, I was wishing for a hole to open up and swallow me whole. The place was packed, but luckily, there was a table big enough for all of us. Luke was especially happy because Ronald McDonald, the clown mascot, was in attendance. My scowl deepened. Why was the clown here? I hated clowns. They annoyed the hell out of me. It didn't take long for us to order, and within a few minutes, our food was ready. I was a few bites into my Big Mac when the clown approached our table. "Oh, I smell a birthday here," the clown giggled. Luke screamed and danced with joy. "I just love birthdays," the clown giggled again, before he started dancing. Everyone started cheering him on, even Hazel. "Go Ronald! Go Ronald!" They chanted as the clown gyrated and spun like a top, much to my family's delight. I didn't cheer along. I was too busy wondering why a grown man would willingly put on that stupid paint and costume just to act like a fool. I was also wondering what was wrong with my family for finding it funny. I raised my head to look for the waitress. I wanted another glass of orange juice. Instead, I made eyes with the clown. That moment felt like an eternity, though it couldn't have been more than a couple of seconds. His face turned quizzical when he realized I wasn't smiling or cheering like the rest. His red smile dropped, and his face twisted into a grotesque mask. He was angry, but I think I was the only one who noticed. A wave of fear rolled over me, leaving my mouth dry. My heart raced, and my instincts screamed at me. The garish white and red paint no longer looked stupid. It was terrifying. The clown finished his dance and took a bow as my family clapped. "That was great, right, Billy?" Luke squealed, tugging at my arm. "Billy, huh?" the clown inquired, looking at me. I gulped. "Why didn't you laugh, Billy?" the clown asked. His tone was friendly, but there were subtle undertones of menace. I stammered before being saved by the McDonald's staff. "Happy birthday to you," they sang, gathering around our table. The clown gave me one last wintry look before vanishing behind the mess of people who had joined in on the birthday cheer. I was uneasy for the rest of the celebration. I couldn't enjoy the food. I kept thinking about the clown and his angry eyes. After we finished eating, we piled back into the van and began to drive home. I was squished between Hazel and Luke, and I couldn't wait to play some serious COD at home. We had gone only a couple of miles when I noticed it. A van driving right next to us, matching our speed. It was white, with blue and red polka dots. Exactly the kind of van you would expect a clown to drive. As I watched, the windows started to roll down, and to my horror, it was the same Ronald McDonald clown from the restaurant. His eyes searched our van, and when they found me, he grinned like a maniac and screamed, "Why didn't you laugh, Billy?" The wind caught his words, but I heard them clearly. So did my dad. "What the f***? Isn't that the mascot from McDonald's?" my dad exclaimed, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "Ronald is," Luke began, before breaking into a scream. A shock went through the van, and a sharp vibration ran through my body. The cloud had rammed into us with his van. He was laughing maniacally, gearing up to ram us again. My dad floored it, and our van tore through the freeway like a bullet. But the clown wasn't having it. He accelerated too, shouting after us the whole time. "You should have laughed, Billy!" he screamed again, ramming into us from behind. Our van wobbled for a few furious seconds, but my dad managed to get us under control. The mood in our van was grim. Everyone had gone quiet, and Luke had tears running down his face. The following moments were like a sequence from a horror movie. My dad weaving through traffic with sweat on his brow, and the crazed clown hard on our heels like a vengeful spirit. With each bump, he grew bolder. It wouldn't be long before he ran us off the road. I shuddered to think what he'd do if he managed to stop us. Suddenly, a new sound drowned out the laughing clown, the wail of police sirens. The relief that flooded me was like a dam bursting. I almost cried as I watched the clown slow down at the command of the squad car approaching from behind. I watched them arrest the clown in a daze. It was only later that we discovered the clown wasn't affiliated with McDonald's. He was just some random guy who had dressed like their mascot and entered the restaurant as another customer. Sometimes, I wondered if he would have chased us if I just smiled.